as we continue our presentation today. So let's talk about 3 of the pillars. First, we need to educate ourselves, and then we need to educate our children. I don't believe that the burden is all on children. I think the burden is on us as adults and parents. We can educate children of what they can do, how they can tell us, they can come to us when they feel uncomfortable, they can say no, but when you take a big adult and you take a small child, they cannot fend off, no matter how many karate classes we teach them, they are not going to be able to fight off against those abusers. They may have some skills that can help them in that moment when they need it, but really it needs to be, it's a society problem, it's an adult problem that we need to help and we need to support children. So there's 3 different pillars that we could talk about, the prevention and preparedness, recognize and respond, and teach healthy sexuality. And I'm going to talk about today, just recognize and respond are going to be the primary ones that I'm going to talk about. So we're going to talk about perpetrator patterns. Grooming. Grooming is when a perpetrator actually prepares children to be sexually abused. So here are some of the grooming patterns. Forming relationships. In the video it talked about 90% know their abuser. They know who that person is. A lot of times we hear stranger danger. Well, I would argue that danger is not necessarily always a stranger. They'd like to test their boundaries. They like to see what a child would do or how they would react. Through touch, intimidating. I've heard from things, for example, it's okay, your parents already know, they said that this was okay. Or they might say, you know, I will harm you or harm your family if you tell anyone. They create fear. They share material that's inappropriate for that age. And they're communicating secretly. Some of the commonalities are that they're subtle, gradual, it escalates. So what if there's someone that we know of in our families or in our communities, and they're a family member? Maybe, you know, sometimes we have a hard time. Everyone knows it. It's like that secret that they go, Uncle so-and-so, we all know that he's a weirdo. Stay away from that guy. And everyone knows it, but we don't know what to do. We don't want to be offensive, or we think, and we don't want to accuse someone, so we're going to confront with kindness. And how do we confront with kindness? We pull the individual aside and we say, explain the boundaries that you set and why. You're not allowed to be alone with my child. We have a rule in our home that our children are not allowed to be one-on-one with another adult. So I would hope that you would respect my boundaries, and these are the rules that we've put in place with our children, and I'm putting you on high alert that that's a rule in our family. We have a rule in our home where I've told our children that when you go to a neighbor's house, and let's say you go over there to hang out and they have to run, maybe to run an errand, or they have to run to soccer practice or whatnot, that they're not allowed to be alone in the home with another adult. That if they see their friend go home, even if they're going to be gone for 15 minutes, they say, you know what, I need to have another person in the room. I know you're my auntie or my uncle, but I need to go home now. And that's the rule. I had a friend where he came to my house and he said, hey, is your son here? And I said, no, he's not. He's going to be back in about 15 minutes. And he said, do you mind if I wait here? And I said, you know what, I would love you to wait here, but we have a rule in our home where we don't have one-on-ones with an adult and a child. And so I know that you know that I'm a safe person, but to keep me a safe person, I would ask that you come back when my son's home, because it's not appropriate for you to be here alone with me as an adult. And it's just so that there's never, someone can never accuse me of something, but also so that they're never in an unsafe environment, and that I can teach them to have good boundaries with adults as well. If you have this discussion with someone, most likely they're going to be very apologetic, and they're going to say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that that was a rule that you had. I'd absolutely honor that. People that might be a perpetrator, you're putting them on high alert, like, hey, you better watch out. Like, I'm watching what's going on with my children. And so you put them on high alert, but also, you know, they also know that this is something that you talk about, that this is not something that they can most likely get away with your child. And so it's important to confront them. They also might be defensive. And sometimes if someone's defensive, then there's also probably an area of concern, because if we really care about children and it's about protecting children, you shouldn't be upset or offended by those types of things. And that remember that you are responsible. You are the one that's responsible for keeping children safe. So here are some signs of abuse. Some that may be physical that are a little bit easier to recognize. They may have difficulty walking or sitting, torn clothing, bleeding, sudden weight gain or loss, and a change in appetite. Maybe some of the things that are a little bit more difficult to recognize, physical things, would be change in sleep patterns, nightmares, unexplained headaches or an upset stomach, vaginal yeast and urinary infections, itching pain or discharge, and swelling or redness. Some of the behavioral that might be easier to recognize would be a reluctance to undress or bathe, fear of being alone with certain people, fear of certain places or objects, uncomfortable with signs of affection, such as hugging or kissing, their hypersexuality, and a change in school performance, or they're withdrawn from their friends or family. So you know your children best. You know when something's not right. There are some things that are a little bit more difficult and hard to recognize with behavior. And usually compliant or perfect behavior where they have to do everything right. And they're so hard on themselves if they make any mistake, that they can't make any mistakes. They revert back to childish behaviors. They have depression or unexplained crying, loss of interest in things that they used to love, eating disorders, substance abuse, self-harm, suicidal behavior, unpredictable or sudden mood swings, anger, fear, or sudden personality changes might be harder to pick up on. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about this quiet giant. This is my quiet giant. This is my oldest. His name is Grant. He is now 6 feet tall. This is a picture of him when he was almost 8 years old. And my little guy, we grew up talking about abuse. Because I was abused, I wanted to make sure that my children were never abused. I would do things like we'd travel on vacation, and I would tell all my children, I have 6 of them, but I would tell all of my children, come sleep in, we'd have a bedroom, and though there were plenty of other bedrooms in the house, I would say, everybody sleep on the floor, we're going to shut the door. I want all my children with me, and they're safe at night, so that something doesn't happen to them in the middle of the night. So I thought, as a mom, I was really overprotective about protecting them from abuse. However, one day, when I was sitting in a restaurant with my son, we had a gentleman that came and sat down next to us, and he happened to be mentally disabled. And he was acting a little bit strange, saying some words that didn't really make sense, and here we're sitting in a booth with all my children, and he came and sat down, and he squished right in next to us, and my children were like a little bit afraid, not knowing why this strange man was sitting next to us. And as we were walking out of the restaurant, I said to him, I talked to him about that people that have mental disabilities are actually angels, and they were perfect before they came here, and that they are going to be perfect when they return back to God, because they don't know the difference between right or wrong, and that they were so good that they didn't need to have all of the things that we had, because that's what I believe. I believe they're angels. And so I was explaining kind of his mannerisms. And I said to my little guy, I said, but we're here on this earth to learn and to choose between right and wrong. And so you're kind of on the hook. He's a little off the hook. He gets to go back and return back home after his life here. And you have to be able to make choices between right and wrong, because we've been given that agency. And when we got home, he started to cry. And he said, Mom, I did something really wrong. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, and he went to continue to tell me that he had been abused by one of our family members, by his aunt, who was about 5 years older than him. And it happened between the ages of 5 and 8. And my heart just sank. It was like the worst nightmare that I could have ever imagined to happen for my children, especially someone like myself who considered to be very proactive in trying to protect my children. And it was a distant family member that we would visit 2 or 3 times a year, and it was in the middle of the day. It wasn't at night. She told him that it was okay, that his parents said it was all right, and and said those things to him, and then he was having that awakening where he realized what had happened to him was wrong, and that's why he wanted to tell us about what had happened. And so my immediate response was that I needed to protect my children, and I needed to honor him, and that he came first before my family. And so I called up our family, and I first let them know that this had been taking place. And it's important to do that because chances are if a 10-year-old is acting out on a 5-year-old, somebody has harmed that 10-year-old. And so they needed to know about that so they could handle things appropriately with their own child and address their things with their own child. Now, at the time of the conversation, the young woman was 13 at the time. And the parents, I felt, didn't do what was probably appropriate, but they put her on the phone and they said, you talk to her, you say you're sorry. And so she got on the phone and I said to her, I said, listen, if anyone understands how you're feeling or what you're going through, I do. I understand. I've been in your shoes. And she said to me, your son is a liar. He's lying. This never happened. And used several profanity words when she said that. And the mother bear in me wanted just to like jump across the phone and just like, you know, but I said very calmly to her, I said, 8-year-olds do not lie about these things. They do not lie. And I'm sorry, but I disagree with you. And I know he's telling you the truth. And I hope that your parents give you the help that you deserve and that you need. And I'm going to stand here with my son. And we stood by my son. And I told my son, if it takes 5 years, if it takes 10 years, however long, we are not going to put you in an unsafe environment to go mingle with those family members until you are healed, until you are safe, because you are our number one priority. And that was the direction that we took as parents to protect our child. Yes, we can forgive and we can love, but there is a difference between forgiveness and safety. We can forgive and have compassion in our hearts, but it's still our obligation to keep children safe. And by healing him, heals other children to make sure that that doesn't continue on. If I don't make sure that he is healed and he is firm with who he is, then the problem can continue. And I'm happy to say that this young man at age 15, last year in his school class with his classmates, he had a project where he talked about leadership. And he didn't tell us what the project was about, but he sat down and he gave a presentation to his fellow classmates. And he talked about the people that were leaders in his life. And his father was a leader who was raised with a single mother. And his mother was a leader who had been abused, but who had overcome that. And then he talked about himself. And he told his story about being abused and that hard things happen to each of us. We all go through struggles, but we have to rise above it. And that doesn't define who we are. And the principal of the school called me that day, and he said, I want you to know that your son did this. He gave his presentation to his classmates. And he said, first, I want to make sure you know about what had happened to him. And I said, yes, I understand and I know. And he said, secondly, I want you to know how proud I was and how important it was for the other women in that classroom to hear what he had to say, because there are others that he knows of that were struggling with that thing, yet he gave them a voice that day. And also, he demonstrated that there is no shame. There is no shame in what had happened to him, that he could stand as a pillar of truth and a pillar of light to his classmates. And I am so pleased. To me, that is truly what healing is about. And so I'm grateful for him. And